You won't believe this. My HOA actually tried to fine me for working nights. Yes, you heard that right. I save lives for a living, and somehow, that was a disturbance to the community. It started with a plain white envelope in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was just another monthly bulletin about lawn maintenance or a reminder to repaint fences in approved neutral shades. But no, when I tore it open, I nearly dropped it on the spot. The letter said, "You are hereby fined $200 for repeated disturbances caused by nightly comings and goings. Further violations will result in escalating fines and possible legal action." I actually laughed at first, thinking it had to be a mistake. Disturbances? My so-called disturbances were nothing more than me pulling into my driveway after late-night shifts at the hospital. Sometimes I left at midnight. Sometimes I came back at 5 a.m. That's life in the emergency room. But the HOA didn't see it that way. Apparently, Patricia, our infamous HOA president, decided my headlights, car door shutting, and occasional phone calls while walking in from my shift were noise violations. She even wrote that my unpredictable schedule was disruptive to the peaceful character of the neighborhood. I stared at that letter, stunned. The irony burned. Just 2 nights before, I had resuscitated one of her close friends who came in with a heart attack. And here she was, calling me a nuisance. I crumpled the paper in my fist, but I knew better than to ignore it. HOAs thrive on intimidation, piling on fines until you either pay or they drag you to court. The next evening, when I returned from another 12-hour shift, Patricia was waiting at the end of my driveway like a hawk. Arms crossed, lips pursed, eyes sharp as a dagger. "Doctor or not," she sneered, "rules are rules. You can't just come and go all hours of the night. People have families here. They need their rest." I wanted to shout back, "People also need doctors when they're choking at 3 a.m. or bleeding from a crash at midnight." But I held my tongue, only managing, "Patricia, this is my job. I don't work nights for fun." Her response? "Then maybe you should find a different job." That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to be a misunderstanding. I could clear up with a conversation. This was a war. The next week was like living under surveillance. Patricia wasn't satisfied with her warning letter. She took things further, much further. I'd barely come home after a 14-hour shift when I noticed something taped to my front door. It was a bright orange notice that read in bold letters, "Violation, disturbing the peace." Underneath it claimed I had been observed slamming doors and idling my vehicle excessively. At 2 a.m., that was a lie. My car is a hybrid, it barely makes a sound. Still, Patricia had a plan, and I soon learned what it was. She started canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, whispering poison into people's ears. "He's up all hours of the night. His headlights wake up my kids. Doesn't he realize this isn't a hospital?" By the end of the week, I felt the shift in the air. Neighbors I'd waved to for years suddenly turned cold. Mr. Henderson, who I once treated for pneumonia, crossed the street when he saw me. A mother tugged her child away as I walked past. Patricia was painting me as a selfish nuisance, and the image was sticking. The final straw came on a Sunday morning. I was sipping my coffee, finally enjoying a quiet moment, when I heard raised voices outside. I opened the blinds and froze. Patricia had set up a folding table on the sidewalk with a petition in hand. The sign on it read, "Protect our peace, stop the night disturbances." She was actively collecting signatures to have me barred from the neighborhood, bored and to force me into compliance with some absurd curfew rule she had drafted. That was it. I could tolerate her gossip, even the phony fines. But attacking my reputation, questioning my character as if I was some kind of criminal? I stepped outside, calm but firm. "Patricia, you've gone too far. This is harassment." She didn't flinch. "This is accountability," she shot back, waving the petition. "You think being a doctor makes you special? It doesn't exempt you from rules." The neighbors watched silently, some sympathetic, others clearly enjoying the drama. For the first time, though, I felt something shift. People didn't seem entirely convinced by her crusade anymore. Some hesitated before signing. Some even lowered their heads when I looked at them. That's when the idea struck me. If Patricia wanted to play this as a public battle, I'd show the entire neighborhood exactly what my disturbances really were. I didn't have to wait long for the perfect moment to strike back. It came on a Thursday night, around 2:30 a.m., when most of the neighborhood was asleep. I had just pulled into my driveway after another grueling shift when my phone buzzed. It was the hospital, an emergency call. One of the residents from our very own neighborhood, an older man named Mr. Lowell, had collapsed at home. His wife was panicked, screaming that he wasn't breathing. I didn't even go inside. I spun around, jumped back in the car, and sped 3 blocks down the street. When I arrived, chaos had already erupted. Mrs. Lowell was crying on the front lawn, and a few neighbors had come outside in confusion. I rushed past them, dropped to my knees, and started CPR right there on the living room floor. The seconds felt endless, but finally, after what felt like forever, Mr. Lowell's chest heaved. His eyes flickered open. He was alive. The paramedics arrived moments later, taking over as I stepped back, drenched in sweat. That's when I noticed. Half the neighborhood had gathered outside, woken up by the commotion. And in the crowd, front and center, was Patricia. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly open. She had no snarky comment ready this time. She had watched me save a man's life in the middle of the night. The very thing she called a disturbance. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Everyone saw it for themselves. My late-night comings and goings weren't about convenience or selfishness. They were about being on call when someone's life depended on it. The next morning, something remarkable happened. Neighbors who had avoided me for weeks now knocked on my door. Mrs. Lowell brought cookies, tears in her eyes, saying, "We owe you everything." Even Mr. Henderson, who had crossed the street to avoid me, offered a quiet handshake and a thank you. Word spread quickly, faster than Patricia could control. The same people who had signed her petition began to regret it. One even asked for their name to be removed. By evening, I heard the whispers. Maybe Patricia was wrong. Maybe the doctor isn't the problem here. That's when I realized the tide had turned. Patricia's crusade was crumbling, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. And her next move? It wasn't just petty. It was illegal. I should have expected Patricia wouldn't go quietly. The night after I saved Mr. Lowell, I found another envelope taped to my door. This one was different. Bold red letters stamped final notice. It read, "Due to repeated noncompliance, the HOA board has voted to impose a $5,000 penalty. Failure to pay will result in legal proceedings and a lien against your property." $5,000. For doing my job. I wasn't even angry this time. I was done. I marched straight into my office, pulled out my files, and compiled every record I had. Shifts logged at the hospital, witness statements, the bogus violation notices, even photos of Patricia lurking outside my driveway at night. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Authority. But I didn't stop there. I also contacted a local news reporter who had been itching to cover HOA abuse stories. When she heard that the only ER doctor in town was being fined for saving lives, she jumped on it immediately. By the weekend, cameras rolled into the neighborhood. A news van parked right in front of Patricia's house. The segment aired that evening. Doctor fined for saving lives. HOA accused of harassment. The fallout was instant. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages of support. Neighbors who had once avoided me now sent apologies. And Patricia? She vanished behind her curtains, refusing to answer the door. But it didn't end there. The State Housing Authority launched a full investigation. Within weeks, they uncovered not just her bogus fines against me, but years of questionable actions, selective enforcement, misused HOA funds, and even personal expenses charged to the association. At the next community meeting, Patricia was forced to face everyone. The room was packed, the air tense. I sat quietly in the back as the investigator read off the findings: mismanagement, fraud, abuse of power. Finally, the vote was called. Patricia was removed as HOA president effective immediately. Some even demanded legal charges be pursued. Her empire of control crumbled right there in the clubhouse. And for the first time, she had no power to silence anyone. As I walked out, neighbors clapped me on the shoulder, thanking me not just for saving lives, but for standing up when most people would have given in. That night, when I pulled into my driveway after another late shift, no one glared, no one whispered. Instead, a porch light flicked on down the street, and I heard a voice call out warmly, "Welcome home, Doc." And for the first time in months, the neighborhood finally felt like a community again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more crazy HOA and Karen stories. Your support helps me bring you even more.